Quickly going to talk about testing and stuff. I had recorded it already, but apparently it didn't last. Wasn't quite in the frame or anything like that. So, in order to make sure that your silver is actually silver, you need to have it tested, or it has to be marked on it. But believe it or not, some unscrupulous people falsely mark their items. Ideally, if you have a ring, usually any ring that has been bought from commercial or an actual professional jeweler or somebody who does this for a living, especially anywhere in the UK or UK owned places, they have to be hallmarked. The US and Canada, unless you are a professional, you don't have to hallmark your items. But all stores, all professional made silver or gold or platinum jewelry has to be marked. So if you have old items, old rings that you have from the 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, or even 60s, 70s, and 80s, a lot of them are marked inside the ring itself. So you'll look inside the inner band and it'll say 925 or fine, or if it's gold, it'll have the carat of the gold, or it'll say platinum on it, whatever it happens to be. Bracelets and necklaces will tend to have a little tab on them, and that tab will say what it is, whatever carat it is for gold, and in some cases it'll say carat GP or KGP, which means carat gold plated. You got to look out for those. Silver will have the same thing. It'll say 0.925 or sterling or stir or SS or fine or 0.999. Sometimes it may or may not say plated. Sometimes, and you will get this if you buy a lot of stuff online, that tag itself is what it says it is, and nothing else is. So you have to be careful about what you're buying. Sometimes things will be silver plated or gold plated and you don't notice it. The only way you can find out is if you test. In order to test, you should have a kit. These kits are easy to buy. You can get them on eBay or Amazon, and they are easy to use. They come with a little stone. It's called Pure Test. So there's a little stone and acids for each thing. So in this case, this is the silver. Then you have 18 karat, 10 karat, 14 karat, 22 karat, and platinum. These ones also allow you, which one do you use it with? The 10 karat one can show you whether you have lead, tin, aluminum, brass, copper, things like that. So in this case, we're going to be using the silver. So we take the silver and we'll take a little bit of silver itself, and this will just show you an idea. So you make a mark on the stone itself, take your silver solution, put a drop on the marks that you have made, and then you check your color. So in this case, you'll see that it is a red, kind of darkish red. So you take your notes, and it says bright red is fine silver, dark red is 0.925. So that piece in particular, it looks like it's darkening up now. So 0.925 or sterling silver. And that's what you're looking for. So do that with all the pieces that you have in order to be able to test properly. Otherwise, you don't know what you have. And not knowing what you have can lead to some issues. Issues such as brittle. So somewhere in this batch was something that was possibly not silver, and it wasn't copper or aluminum, or it would not have reacted like that, because silver, or copper and aluminum usually mix okay with silver, or copper always does. That's how you get sterling silver. So somewhere in there was either a piece of pewter, more than likely. So you have to be careful and you have to test. So what I did was use a little mini hacksaw that you can get just about any hardware store. I think they're like $5 or $10, something like that. It also did not show me filing. So once you've got it cut, you need to file your edges flat. You need to file your edges straight as well. So they have to be flat and straight, and you'll see why very shortly. Now, I choose to file over a piece of cloth right now. I try to do it most of the time anyway, whenever I'm filing, just so that I can keep my little bits and pieces. But in this case, we're gonna use it, and you'll see why. So try and get it as square as you can on both sides. So it could be flat, but if you're not square to the edge, then it's not going to quite work right. Now you can fix that. But you want it as flat and square as possible, because when you solder, the least amount of gaps you have, the better off you'll be. Now you can do it with gaps, but it's going to cause you a lot of headache and a lot more work than honestly you really need to do. The more work you do now, the less you'll have to do then, and the less annoying it will be then. This is just, it gets you used to it, you know what I mean? If you want to keep doing this, you'll understand. So try and get it as square as you can. Make sure you have annealed your silver. So to anneal your silver, you need to heat it up to a red heat and then quench it. That anneals silver, gold, copper. Right. You're going to have little ridges in there. Try and get those out. You can file them off afterwards or sand them off afterwards. But so if you're not positive it's square, get it as square as you can, and you'll see in a moment whether or not it actually is. So you're going to take, and if it is annealed, this will bend right over. If it is not annealed, it's not going to do that well. So I cut this a little bit bigger than I wanted it. If you have a mandrel, this is a ring mandrel, you can use your ring mandrel and bend it around, and then you can take your hammer and give a couple of taps, right? And get it into the position that you want. If you don't have a mandrel, what you are going to want to do is to find something approximately the size of the ring or the finger that you want to use. Maybe a cork. Okay? Something. So here it's not round. I want a couple of taps. get it to the approximate shape. So we were doing this finger. That's a little tight, but that's fine. I can work with a little tight. So again, so we see where we are. This is why I gave it a little bit of extra, so that I can actually, you know, if I need to, I can cut some off. And in this case, I do. So I see where I want to go. Right. I make my mark. Then I can straighten it back out. And I can cut. Again, using the hacksaw. Now, if you have a jeweler's bench or a jeweler's vise, or prong, I forget what they're called, you can use that. If you don't, you can make them. And they look just like that. And that's all you have to do. This is screwed to my bench, and I can saw on there, or in this case I can hand sand knives. But if you don't have it, or if you don't have a bench and you're working on the kitchen table, just have a piece of wood like that that you can brace your work on and do it that way. And again, this is a budget build, so you're doing it the best way you can with the tools that you have. I'll try it again. I'm going to brace this edge right here. I'm going to use my other pliers. Just like that. And this, back of my strap. So, the edge is fairly square. I'm going to tap it out again just to make sure. I'm still going to take a file to it. Now, as you work silver, it will work harden, and it will get harder and harder to move. This is why I waited to pickle it, because I'm going to have to anneal it again. Got a little gap in here that I don't want, or a little, it's not as straight as I would like it. So I'm still just trying to get that square. Okay, so again, heat it up to red hot. and quench. Okay, once you take it out, you want to make sure your ends are still clean. Nothing stops you from giving them a quick little file just to make sure that they're clean. They need to be clean, otherwise they will not solder properly. So, quick clean. So again, give my quick bend. So what I like to do, now I'm pretty sure that this is the, remember we already checked it, so, and even with the gap, I know it's fitting here. So, it's a scale falling off of there. So what I like to do is make sure the ends are fitting, so I square them, right? So I flatten them down. Make them flat. And then you want to do is take your pliers and work them so that they actually pressure fit. You hear them snapping? That's what you want. So once you get them together, if you look down, and I know that they're different sizes here, and we don't care about that, right? Because we're not worried about that. We can true that up later with the files and sandpaper. But what we need to make sure is that this join, in order to, you've got to make sure that, so you see how it's not quite flat? So, got to make sure that they're flat. Okay, so they're flat here, and now I can adjust. You go, same as if you were doing a jump ring, you go under, over, in order to get that pressure fit. Right? You can hear it snapping. So it's not a perfect join. I do have some gaps. You can continue to file and try and get rid of those gaps. But in this case, they're fairly close, so I don't want to. So now we come to the solder. So, solder comes in a couple of different kinds. You can get, this is a cadmium based solder, and it works for just about everything I do. This is a cadmium free solder, and it's an easy. That means it's the last piece, the last soldering that you do. Most solder will come in easy, medium, and hard. You use your hard solders first, then your medium solders, then your easy solders, if you have more than one thing to solder on them. If it's just one, you're just soldering the joint on a ring, use whichever you like. But if you're going to solder the joint on a ring, then you're going to solder some fittings on here or findings, and then you're going to solder a setting on it. You're going to want to go from hardest to easiest so that it doesn't melt off, because if you use an easy solder on here and then you put a setting on here, you're going to melt your easy solder before you solder the fitting on or the finding. So you want to start with your hard solder on your main join and then go for your medium and then your easy. You can also get a flux solder. So this is solder paste. So this comes automatically with solder, silver solder, and the flux already in it. You get a couple of different nozzles, and they're basically just different size syringes, and they allow you to direct the solder right where you want to go. Makes it a little easier, and it's good for things like filigrees, or if you have a large piece and you've got a bunch of little things in there and you don't want the solder flowing all around it. So the idea is that you cut little pieces and then you put them into position. Well, what if you don't have solder? Again, we're on a budget. You didn't buy this. You don't have it. You don't know where to get it. You can't use plumbing solder. I'll tell you that right now. Let me rephrase that. You can use plumbing solder. The join will not hold properly and it will look like garbage. So what can you do? Well, you can make your own. And this is a start. So you can make solder out of the filings. Here we go, back to casting, not casting, melting. So the idea behind making your own solder, you need to have the right percentage. Now in this case, a medium solder is usually, depending on where you get it from, a 2-to-1 mix of silver, copper, and zinc. So in our particular case, I have a piece of brass and some silver. So the idea is that you mix this brass and silver and a little bit of our silver powder that we've got from our filings, and we can make silver solder. So I'm going to pour this in there. And I'm going to put our 2-to-1, and it's 2-to-1 by weight, so you may have to weigh it. In goes the brass, in goes the silver, and back to our torch. In this case I'm going to use the propane torch. I think my propane is starting to run low. So I'm going to quickly switch Hey, it's going to give me a hard time. And there we have solder. So, how much do you need? Honestly, about that much. So, we made extra, whatever. Save that. And again, this stuff's the same. You can, you know, flatten it out, use it later. You can also mix it with a little bit of borax and get a paste and use it the same as you would the syringe borax, or the syringe solder, the solder paste. There we go. I'll be alright. I'll get it eventually. So, here's the solder. Now we need a flux, because you have to have flux. What the flux is flux, you say? So, remember our borax? This is borax. This is a flux. It's a basic flux. You can also get